Hi, my name's Ollie Bless and this is my channel Book Draw. For those who don't know, I enjoy looking at queer fiction and occasionally I create images out of it. Today I'm doing a wrap up from June where I was particularly focusing on a lot of queer related books. So the first one was the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. So this is a kind of epic fantasy which is done across 3 books. I did it as an audio read, which I'm really glad I did. However, the only criticism I would say with having an audio read for an epic fantasy, there is the benefit of that all the world building with anything kind of fantasy or science fiction is usually something that takes a little bit of time to adjust to. But I was missing the glossary, and I know now that there is this big glossary at the end where it can explain everything else. So when I was first kind of going along with it, it took me a little while to get my head into some of the terminology that was being used. The benefit of doing audio is someone else is going through that terminology for you, and you just become more familiar with the sounds of the words. And since, because it was something that I actually listened to at the beginning of the month, I went back to wiki some of the terminology and it's all there. So if you are doing it as an audio read, you always have Wikipedia. You always have these resources to hand. So basically it's following 3 different main storylines, but then there's a whole series of other side characters which are integrated into this, but it's mainly 3 female protagonists, and they live in this world which is kind of like Pangaea, where we used to have all our continents squished together into one supercontinent. So they live in a world which is like that, and what's really interesting is the magic system is all kind of based around the kinetic energy and magniflows of the continent, and there are this group of people who can tap into that, where they can actually pull from the Earth's energy, and they're called origins, and they have this ability to manipulate the heat and the energy flow. But what's also kind of scarier is that if they can't withdraw this heat, they as an energy source, they can withdraw it from human beings, and so they freeze. But every time the magic is used, it's really beautifully illustrated, and you really go in through the eyes of the person who is casting that magic. So I really, really enjoyed that part. What kind of clashed for me slightly is that one of the characters, Ensun, so at the beginning she has 2 children. One of them gets murdered, and then the rest of her journey is trying to search for her daughter. But for some reason, particularly when you're hearing it, it's doing it through a second-person narrative, and it really jarred with me, because I was like, what, me? Or because I was listening to it, I was like, is you a character name? And then I was like, no, this is actually me. I am now this person. So that jarred with me a little bit, but you kind of get over it. You just go with the flow, don't you? You go with the magniflow and magma flow, and just go along with the ride. But the other characters I really, really enjoyed. I particularly liked one of the characters called Cyanite. So Cyanite has this ability where and she's got these 4 rings. So that is a demonstration of her kind of level of ability. And she's brought together with Alabaster, who's a 10-ringer, so he's like super powerful. It's interesting to see the dynamic of their relationship and how their relationship evolves through the course of their time together. And it kind of goes into some polyamory territory there, which I actually really enjoyed listening to, and how that was kind of constructed, and the roles of the relationship. And that was the kind of queer element within it as well. But I believe that some of this queerness will continue to expand through the rest of the trilogy from the people that I've spoken to. But I just thought it was quite a refreshing tone in terms of the relationships that were in there and what their roles were together. It felt like from reading it, I was only really being introduced to what the rest of the world is. So it's actually left me wanting more. And I really enjoyed the ride with it. The next one which I want to talk about is Let's Talk About Love, which is by Kann, and let's talk about love, because I love this book. I think this might be like a read of the year for me. So this is all about Alice, and she has just broken up with Margot, so she's actually asexual, and that was the kind of root cause of why they broke up. She's working in a library, which I also find really cute as well, just because you kind of want to be there. You want to be in the world that she's living in. And she's got this colour code system where she kind of sees other people and as a level of attraction to her. And so previously, like, everyone's been different shades of like yellow and green and up to orange. But then there's this new guy, Takumi, who comes in to the library, and she starts working with him, and she is like knocked off her feet, socks off, thrown across the floor. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know how to describe him. Like, she's got all the feels, and so he becomes code black, and she's like, this guy is doing things for her, and she is kind of a bit confused by what those feelings mean to her. So then she goes for a bit of counselling, and she gets a bit of support, learning about the difference between attraction and desire. So and how they are actually separate entities to each other. Because I'd never really kind of considered it before or mulled much on it. And because this book was introduced to me through Vigilante and Perpetualpages. And so Adriana, they had like explained what it means to be asexual, and because I was finding it quite confusing and difficult to kind of grasp, like some of the language and some of the how that feeling feels. But reading about the separation between attraction and desire really kind of spelled it out for me. So like, in terms of, for me personally, the way I would relate that to is like, I can see someone like Zac Efron is very attractive. Like, I think he's an attractive guy, he's very pretty, but I there is just no desire there for me personally. Whereas if you can to compare him with someone like Jared Butler or Idris Elba, like, that is desire. Like, I'm all into that. But I would see all of them as attractive people, attractive men. But I like, what gets me kind of going and gets me interested is some of the attributes that both the other two display over someone like Zac Efron. So it kind of helped unlock some things in my thinking as well, and I think that's why I appreciated this more. So even if you're not someone who's ace, like, there is a lot that you can get out of it, and it was fun. It was really fun, and it was really endearing and sweet and joyous, and I was just wrapped up in it. You just wanted to chill out with her and just hang out, and I would love to know where she goes on and what happens to them next. And the ending is just so super cute. I was really into this. So the next one which I read was The Brightsiders, which was a part of the Queer Lit Reads readathon, where they did a read along with, and that was through Rogan and Kathy. And I hadn't even heard about this book. It wasn't on my radar at all. But what I particularly liked about this book is that it was really positive about different forms of queer representation throughout the book. So The Brightsiders is focusing on Emma King, who is a bisexual female character who's a drummer in a band, and they're doing really, really well, and she's on the cusp of like going to start to explore what it would be like to sing, and there is all this kind of ongoing media-based drama where she's kind of fallen a little bit off the rail, and she's trying to rectify some of the bad things in her life. And what I particularly thought was great is Emma's not the most self-confident character, but she has a level of self-awareness, and she knows some things in her life aren't right. And it's through her friendships and the conversations that she has, she is able to actually say, no, this isn't actually right, and there are things that are wrong in my life which I need to sort out and alter. So there was some really positive messaging, particularly for a YA novel, which I just really appreciated. The only kind of criticism against that is that a lot of it's attached to wealth. So because she's in this position of being a superstar, she has a lot more privilege and freedom, and when she's struggling, she basically hops on a plane and goes to Hawaii and chills out and can get her headspace sorted. So in terms of how that relates on a day-to-day basis for the rest of us, you kind of just have to go, okay, we're living the super rich lifestyle right now, and if you had all the positions of wealth and privilege, maybe this is how it would go, and you're in a position of complete control. So there was something slightly jarring for me about that pulled me out. So the next one, which I want to read and I just want to gush about, is Queer: A Graphic History. So this is a graphic novel which takes you through all the different thoughts and theories surrounding queer theory as a structure, and I just found this book fascinating. Graphic novel fascinating. So this is by Meg-John Barker and Julia Scheel, I guess. One of the most interesting parts for me was talking about performative gender. So in terms of how when we present ourselves to other people in society, we are all actors and we are all acting. And I'm aware of that kind of concept of we are all acting, life's a stage and stuff, but this was really talking about how gender is really specifically performative and how some people can react against wanting to perform in a certain way because it doesn't necessarily sit well with them, and how there is expectations about those gender roles in which you experience and you act out on a day-to-day basis. But what I didn't realise is that there are all sorts of books, and maybe I'll add this as a picture on the side, which go into swathes of other thinkers. So there's a whole thing on Jungian theory and folklore and satire and psychology, and I'm just like, maybe I just want the entire catalogue of this stuff because it's super easy to digest and really quick and easy consumable introductions to quite heavy material. So the next one was a buddy read which I did from Adam from Mementomori and ShawntheBook Maniac, and it was going alongside a heap load of other people. It was like the biggest buddy read that I've been involved with, but those two kind of spearheaded the idea, and I was just invited in by Shawn. So I don't know anything about Muriel Spark before this point, and this is her first book that she wrote, and Shawn was just like, do you want to take part? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Kind of going outside of what I was trying to achieve with my Pride Month, but then it turned out that it had a queer character, and the way in which they were discussing the characters, an uncle who is gay, it was actually quite like triggering to me in some ways, because there's lots of themes within this which are wrapped up around religion, and so Muriel Spark's lead character, Caroline, is kind of I would say like Caroline kind of is Muriel Spark within this, but her character is aware that she's in a book, or she becomes aware that she's in a book, and the other people around her are kind of characters within this construct, and she's working out how she thinks and feels within that narrative, and what it means to her. And there's a lot of metaphysical fiction at play within this book, which really pickled my brain as I was going through it. And because I didn't have some of the context of who she was or what she was about, and actually Adam was really, really helpful in terms of providing this breadth of context, which helped me just lock in and understand who she was. But she's quite playful and devious with her perceptions of religion and her relationship, and so she converts to Catholicism, but she's also quite cynical and highlights the hypocrisy that exists within religion, but she has this kind of devout faith. And the thing that hurt really was she's having this conversation with the uncle, and it concludes with her saying, but there's something undeniably wrong with a person being gay in terms of through scripture or through what's outlined in the Bible, and it's something that she can't argue against. And for me, someone who is really questioning what religion means and was quite playful and provocative with it within the book, who can kind of reveal things and look at things in a kind of quizzingly fun, light-hearted way and kind of poke holes, and but was led to the conclusion that still someone who was gay was wrong. That hurts. That hurts that someone has that mentality. But then further on down the book, she later says that other people may have problems with you, but I don't. So instead of me interpreting what she was saying, that like you can't deny what is written in the Bible itself, but it's not something that necessarily affects her and she doesn't see it. And actually, a mementomori was saying how she ends up living with a woman for the last part of her life. So potentially she might be a bit queer herself. But so that, because it kind of was a book which I really like grappled with conceptually. And there are so many layered different bits within this book that although it's quite slight, it's doing a lot, and it was doing a lot in a quite playful way, but in a really unexpected way, and having the insights of everybody else apart from who are a part of that group really added to the depth of the experience of reading. I would not have got as much out of this book had I read this in isolation by myself. If you want to do a group read with on a book, this is a book which I would encourage people to explore collectively rather than in isolation, because I think you could look at it in quite a narrow and quick way, but if you actually give it time and actually unpick some of the things that are being told within this story, it just adds a lot more layers to it, and it became quite a rich read for me by the end, which I wasn't expecting. I thought it'd be kind of quick and frivolous, and it turned out to not be, and to be really epic and cool in the end. So those are all the books which I read in the month of June. I know this is probably a little bit late. I seem to be like telling you a month later what happened in the previous month on a regular basis, so we'll just kind of go with that as a theme, shall we? But I have loved this month in terms of the reading that I've done. All the stories, there has not been a bad read this month. It's been so good, so good. And like that queer history is something that I will be dipping back into just to kind of remind myself of some of those concepts, and kind of making me look at the world more critically in terms of what are we all doing here? Why are we behaving in this way? But anyway, this is enough from me. I've had a really good time telling you all about this update, and I will see you again real soon. Okay, bye!